time in 27 years of this hashtagging at many court cases throughout time. Many court cases. The story to stay on the start of matter of problems relating to 1997 report. RICO. The story to stay on the 1997 report children raped in Ogden, Kansas. About a bad group of people in racketeering influence, corrupt crime organization. 27 years of me living a threatened life and harassed. Over a personal matter of those two boys being officer kids and being charged. Many court cases throughout time to state. They are all related to the same bad group of people from a different place. Even the KBI Attorney General as well throughout time in 27 years of this harassment of a threatened life. Relates to issues. Hashtagging at hazing, bullying and solicit. At racketeering influence, corrupt crime organization. Child victim. Even in human and child trafficking profiteering. Drug trafficking. Kansas Code racketeering businesses. Racketeering and profiteering. Human and child profit in prostitution. Federal civil rights. Human rights violation. Section 1. The start of a problem. When I was about 9 or 10 years old, something bad had happened to me along with other children my age. The place it had happened was in Ogden, Kansas, 331 8th Street. In the backyard of the house off South Park Street and 8th Street. House that's next to the bridge along the wood line. There is a report of this had happened in 1997 about, with SRS and Riley County Police Department of those who were arrested. The two young men name goes by Mark Marshall and Trevor Stroda weren't from around and came from another place. One of them being 18 and the other just close to turning 18 years of age were both charged as adults on account of rape on children while using drugs. While caught in the act, there was a little park at the end of 7th Street, next to South Park Street. Just some sand, a tractor tire, half of it buried in sand, next to a woodline and private savage yard or private property. It's where most kids would go out to play. They approached us and said that they ran out of gas, or it was a minor repair. They were manipulating and luring us to go help them, which they think that we could fix it, very ensuring that we could. Body movements of arms reaching out like a right-wing position in basketball or like hurling a crowd of cows. They changed the subject as an interest in looking at a bus, camper house on wheels or like a clubhouse. It was only 3 to 4 houses down on South Park Street on 8th Street. Behind 331 8th Street. The house by the bridge at end of the street that everyone in the neighborhood knew. Scott, his daughter who is mentally disabled and wife who had passed on a time ago. I was the one telling those kids while walking with them that they are strangers and haven't you learned that in school? Stranger danger? Let's go back. I spoke. But they said they were much bigger than us the rest of the kids and the two men. With that said by them, they added calming insurances of words to say that we are just helping people in need. What we are doing is a good deed. I was on the right end meaning, 4 of us kids were side by side. I was next to the 4-year-old boy who was on my left. Next to him was another boy around my age with a 4-year-old girl at the other end with Trevor on the left with those kids and Mark on the right. The boy and girl were together and I have never seen them before. They came out of the wood line and to also mention they were talking as to expecting those two men. Saying we can't escape or some were not on the list and doesn't matter as to planned who is being targeted or to join their corrupt government organization. 4-year-old boy. Knowing somewhat of the 4-year-old boy, because I see him once and a while as well as rumors and talk about by the other kids or parents. He was spotted at my school on the outside of the fence of the playground when the other kids and I would play. Weird but to understand I asked him once or twice about following me during confronting him when school ended that day. To him describing in details of the question, I asked him about following, I guess of my natural pure heart and problem solvings, kids naturally attract. Then I asked if he watching and seen the 3 fights I got into during school that day and that they were all bullies in our school? Yes, he said, and he was told to keep an eye on me. Only me. From who he didn't say as I asked your parents. Also, he said he would watch me all the time. Saying he's always there, his behavior was in confused state. Then to agree that he hides to awkward feeling of seeing everything while at home conversation to him not giving details. I had no clue whatsoever. I would have to explain to him as what hiding meant, as I thought nonsense to even point towards trees and bushes, because I was unaware most times, as I caught him a few several times through the time of him being around. Note, all I can say is, was I a target? How could he really hide that well? Being well known of surroundings while never plays with other kids and while at home? Of course, I was young and thought nothing of it, as to later on to figure out it was more than what he just didn't know or what he was trying to say. Note, this is just to keep in mind as my thoughts goes. When I am coming or going to school and back to my house, he would follow. Basically, something about government while walking home from school. As to walking home, I passed by a very close friend named Corey and his girlfriend Christina near the soon-to-be Korean church, with connections that ties to corrupt organization later on. My friend was sent by his new girlfriend to fight me. Corey walked up to me and the boy, whispering, saying to me to say that I forfeit and you're a coward. He walked away and saying he won. I said I got into 3 fights that day and exhausted, but I'll add you to the list as 4th fight. Corey wasn't a violent person at all. He considers me to be his best friend, as our parents got along. Reaching 7th Street and walking past my trailer to walk with the boy to walk him home. About the rumors on his parents are strict and that he was adopted. A short pause from him as I questioned him about it. To his response was surprised, and I was told. I knew about him from rumors and from time to time seen him walking around near his home for about 4 months time frame. In addition to that, also talked about his mother as pointed towards a direction to where he lived. That his mom is his mom, but the other one was not. Meaning a man or stepfather who we hear from standing on 7th Street when arguing, looking towards the front end of the trailer as his mother, who I could see now visible, was halfway out the side deck of sliding door glass, as it would be called, the back door of a trailer house or mobile home. These trailers were at the end, about 4 of them sideways from the rest on 7th Street. The driveway came in from South Park Street, from the alleyway between 8th Street and 7th Street. Seeing his mother, I could see a sort of resemblance, but did not see the other person. He asked me how I knew, because if you didn't notice while I was pointing everywhere, that there are kids that come out to play every day as trailer park homes or homes in the neighborhood. Military base right next to Ogden, Kansas as well. This was prior to going to that park that day where those boys came, meaning Mark and Trevor. He said that his parents would fight. Anyways, from Mark and Trevor, as we went to that park at the end of the road, they approached us with the 2 unknown kids that came out of the wood line that I have never seen before. Then to be forced in a way towards the bus, so I said while approaching the house, 331 on 8th Street, I knew that man. They said he wasn't home, and I responded back, he is home, and that he is always there or home like Scott had said, the man that lives there. Said they knocked on the door and looked through the windows. Scott was the homeowner who lives there. They did change subject as they knew him and that they were camping out in his backyard all weekend. That they said that they needed to get out from behind that man's yard before he comes home because they didn't know him, as they ran out of gas from broken down and had to push it up there without of sight. To them clearly making it a point that no one is there. I did knock on the door a lot, and the idea of that I also started to look through the window next to the door I was knocking on, because Mark said he knocked and looked through all the windows to him not being there. While no answer on door to Mark constantly pestering in every way possible to be guided to the bus. The other kids went inside the bus, and a good comparison to it is a short bus, mostly white with light brown or brown lettering and of trims on it. The bus in backyard of Scott's house. They went to the bus entrance as the last one to enter and to be like the big brother, as he was younger than I was, the 4-year-old boy. I was cautious about those 2 older guys as I went inside. Trevor sat near the back, opposite of driver's side second seat near to the end of bus, with the girl and other boy doing inappropriate things with Trevor while use of meth. The other one across from me and the 4-year-old standing halfway out in the aisle in the seat behind the one I was sitting. Where I was sitting was the passenger side near the front as second seating to avoid hassle from Mark's inappropriate demands. Also, it was for escape or survival tactics when he moves to the back. Mark across from me in the other seat. Mark saying, "Isn't this the coolest thing you ever seen?" And how it was like a house that moves to say it was like an RV. A house on wheels to also say a clubhouse. tried to explain it to us to joining their personal life, but then those kids in the back with Trevor spoke that they already knew and were excited about it as finally happening. Trevor was communicating saying like an interview as Mark agreed as a job. We would have to get to job application later in life when we grow up, so it's all like that. Also saying we needed to go through an initiation like orientation. So as the obvious of Trevor and what he was doing with those two kids as far as I knew what they wanted us to do. I started to question Mark about it as confirming what we have to do because the only thing in my mind was stranger danger and what I learned in school. Answering my question, but needed to explain the clubhouse or job as house rules and ways. Just as I expected what I learned in school, I heard enough. For the only thing constantly being worried about, and I did not want a part of it, I spoke. Mark wanted me to hear them out as to pre-planned life. Mark talks about a drug and that they were using. Making you feel awesome, smarter and faster. As Trevor was over-fascinating himself with those two little kids. Superhuman-like strength, like 10 times the average human being while also feeling good, or it's like candy and have to wait, he told me, because I questioned about it. Said that because we were too young and have to wait. Trevor and him talked as I questioned about the drug instead to avoid doing what they wanted us to do. I also question ages from 5 to 7 and even 10 to 14 years old to be able to use the drug. In addition to that, to ask until we do that sexual thing. As candy was mentioned again as to saying that Trevor's private part was like candy. Like a lollipop. The other kids were encouraging as not to get into details, but I will. Because of Trevor and Mark, as somewhat I see Mark with that pipe and Trevor's pipe. To me, looking at Trevor and back as I questioned of seeing it. Mark pulls a rose bowl with meth out of his left side pocket. I didn't want to be part of it as before as saying. The topic on vehicle problem to gas is empty and saying someone will be here as on their way, but it was a lie. To steer back on track to Mark saying once again, all I'm saying is to hear me out. Basically, a planned out life. A good life then to have a hard life. Safe and protected by authorities. A better life with power of protection, basically without choice of what you'll be, and at least you be a success, but being managed. And at least you be a success. Compared to having a hard life and no life at all, a loose end. To check with Mark as Trevor asking him about having a hand towel and Mark went back there. Meanwhile, I acted fast for chance to talk to the 4-year-old boy. I lowered my voice to him about wanting to get out of here and be saved. That I'll help him, just hold on to my hand. He said, how could we get out? They're bigger than us, and that the bus door was not going to open. Then he explains that there is a lever and a grown person or someone big has to do it. I was only concerned of the door as from the start as entering it and watching how wore out it was after inside to see him close it. I told him the bus door is weak and broken. That I could squeeze out with ease due to fold-in bus door with middle gap opening was 1 inch to 1.5 inches while flimsy looking. Told him to trust me on this, and he agreed. Mark comes back. He tried to persuade as saying to think of a lollipop and like it's candy. Just think of it like that and it is just like it. About clubs and clubhouse rules as trying to force initiation said after Trevor says hurry up. The first attempt to escape. Then as Trevor was asking about meth and his bowl is empty for more to Mark going back there again. I might not get another chance like this one and it was time to make a break for it or escape. I was at the last to second step while Mark is guarding and bullying now. I did notice the door to get a better angle on it as heavier than I thought. In addition to that, the thoughts of rescuing that boy I forgot to save. But of course, he won and that I gave it my all, while slightly pressing on the doors and examining the door gap that's in between, the doors as it folds in meaning. Then to going back onto the bus, escorted by Mark. That if I cannonball from the top of the stairs, as the looks of the flimsy door would be my best shot, and to save the boy. Mark walks me back, shoving and pushing me back between the aisle of the backrest of first seats. Now standing on one seat to the other as Mark would block off entrance. I was a foot or closer from Mark and the 4-year-old was behind me or halfway out in the aisle to seating. The door is locked. He is bigger than me and said I was going nowhere. Mark hunched over looking at me. To me being struck very hard across my face as well as my face turned to the side meaning as in with his hand that struck my face meaning. to not let us go nowhere as Trevor and Mark was communicating back and forth, but while Trevor couldn't move as to being busy. I see another escape route, but it was going to be tricky because it was going through a gap under his legs and out the bus door. Then to launch out by throwing my body at and through the door should do it. With how things looked with that bus door. I turned to my friend and said, "Are you still with me to get out of here?" The 4-year-old boy was cautious and said that he wanted to stay. To listen to them because he wants to have a better life and that we should hear them out. I told him they're going to rape you. He responded that he doesn't mind and that everything they are saying makes sense because that's the problems his parents always arguing about. He was scared naturally at the escape plan failed. I would have tried to save them all but the others were too far back there. As I was talking to him to make sure as well as needing cooperation, like insurance of 110% sure of saving his life, as sharing my plans with him to grabbing on with a wrist lock holding hands. Mark said, "You know I can hear everything you're saying, it's not going to work." I then turned my head towards him and I replied, "I know," and I wasn't whispering to be correct while turning back. I told the 4-year-old if he wanted to be saved as I could save him guarantee. To ensure him I would do all the work and my hands have my full body lock, that I would do that for him. To get into details on lock is explained best to a ledge or mountain situation. If the falling person is locked in with the one saving and saving one as well locked in. If locked in and slipping farther to death meaning bodies to the end point. If both people do not release then both are going to fall down. Distraction tactics. I knew naturally that my body and strength as well as my heart that I could without thinking back then. Took a few times to ensure that I could save him. Finally, after the 3rd time asked as he said yes. I told him to stick out his arm and hand also never to let go. But he can hear us. I replied back, "I know. Just trust me and I would do all the work, that even dragging him off as half my size I would think he would fly out of there, if you know what I mean." But he was worried it was not going to work, but he was aboard with my plan. The plan was set. The only plan I didn't say, but kept in mind was distraction. When I was talking or during talking, I gunned it. As talking as a distraction tactic. With me grabbing his wrist fast and didn't feel lock on by him. But I wasn't thinking because I knew he was listening and I wasn't stupid. As I went under and between his legs, he drops down between us to him trying to lift back up from awkwardness of him being racked or body position as to being stuck. Mark's back against mine complicating the capture. Something snagged like a fishing hook under a rock, but more like an anchor stuck under a mountain as second pull. I tried to pull without looking then to look back after the second pull. That when I notice him being racked and trying to balance himself like a balance board. Surprising that 4-year-old boy wasn't working with me, but to slam his other hand on the back rest of the seat, and his foot on the metal bracket of seating mount, trying to hold on to me with the brace as for seeing what was holding me back. "Hold on to him," Mark said. When I see what the problem was, I ripped out of his arm and wrist lock. Mark's head crouching down looking under and between his legs at me. Mark then jumps completely over the 4-year-old as he did at a point before to look at me from under and between his leg. To a behavior of actions of shocked. Basically, flipping out. Mark was closing in on me as I jumped to throw myself out by missing all steps on the bus, as to a cannonball effect off the diving board. Mark did try to grab me to hold lever while bracing himself, but didn't work. Then to launch himself towards me as I was out. The 4-year-old boy I tried to save almost cost me my life. But just as I predicted that my body would force me out those wore-out old bus door. Outside the bus. Mark stood at the bus door with both hands on each side of the door trims. Then saying "come back," that he's faster. He switched the hand closest to the front of the bus to both hands on one side for advantage or for leverage. As one on the trim and other on the vertical support rail, then both hands on trim as positioning. I was standing 5 feet away from the bus door and him. He then talked about he is bigger than me and come back as using talk as a distraction to slingshot his body out to try and grab me. Slipping out as his fingertips, but did not firmly grab a hold of me. He yells "stop." Now I was facing in the opposite direction and head turned in a sort of looking back as to shoulder. Using my peripherals as a wing guard would do in a basketball game. Trevor said, "What's the problem?" Basically, because I was a kid. while Trevor still molesting those two kids that he said Mark needed to get me back on the bus and no loose ends. Also, what the boss would do, and Mark knew that. Mark stuck his head back inside and said who? The boss, and that he should know that. I know that. He responds back. Mark saying that he kills little kids and babies, many of them. That Trevor knew that. In addition to Trevor already knows what Mark is capable of doing. Then tickling words after saying all that plus is bigger, faster, stronger, and it would be easy. Also said if I don't that he would and drag me on the bus. I told him good luck and that I am faster as well as I would scream the word help while running. Without saying out loud, I also had another idea of distraction and making myself a lot faster. By slipping out of shoes as if past childhood friends would race, and I was the fastest kid to add. I kept it quiet so I could survive. I also questioned for him to explain what loose end was as that Trevor mentioned as well. After he explains that, Mark said no and that he was not trying to do that, just don't tell. I told him I wouldn't, and that I would walk back home. He said, how do I know or trust you? Also told me while trying to be nice to come back on the bus, and don't tell anybody. Letting some guards down to explain. I would walk back, and that was enough trust. In addition to that, as I was trying to explain it while Mark jumps out at me and way more than last time and barely got me. I doubled back to 2 steps and running to stop. As I felt the graze of wind on my hand to start running a few steps. He yelled, please stop. And again, like a wing guard head tilted at shoulder. I was in a frozen spot like a track star at the start line, but not professional, but was at the edge at this point. Please stop, don't run and scream, he asked. Just a note that it is about 3 or 5 more times I faced death or close to being murdered. By the first or second attempts and expression with behaviors, I knew how dangerous it was. Mark begging for me to stop and hear him out. I told him I will run the next time without looking back. If you make 1 step, or even move a hair, I will. Mark was stunned without words, frozen solid. Short pause to me speaking again. Told him to back up to me speaking again to make clear. Told him to back all the way up as to bus door. He steps 1 or 2 steps backwards. To his 1 foot a step at a time, one after the other and being stubborn. I said again reinforcing words as for serious talk. He backed that foot in as a 10 hut. I spoke up once more, back up. He said he couldn't go back any farther. How can I trust you or believe I can trust you not to tell, Mark asked. I told him that I have heard from those 2 other kids, also the 4-year-old, Trevor asking again about what is taking so long and that he can't handle a little kid. Mark responded back trying to explain of what he had just heard. Trevor was still on the loose end subject. Please don't tell, and that Mark was taking my words, but still wasn't good enough. Again, to say come back on the bus. A quick pause to him changing back onto topic, asking me to turn all the way around and face him. I turned sideways a little and calmly relaxed, but on guard as wing guard in basketball. He wanted me to promise him, to politely say and with emotions to please face him. That he wouldn't try it again as he believes me. I said I wasn't worried and from a pause to face him directly, sticking out his hand and extending a pinky to say pinky promise. I wasn't doing that because it was weird or too girly. Something a mother or father might do for a child as a parent would feel bad for not showing up to a school play or game. Military salute, Boy Scout salute. To spit on it and do a handshake. I said I don't do that, it's gross. He tried saying it was what men or grown men do, that's to close a deal or make promises. Mark noticed that he wasn't going to get contact or could move from bus doors. He said on Scout's honor. He was confused and asked me that I don't know the salute. Oh, I said. I got one better than that, an army salute. So, I saluted while waiting and holding it. Mark was shocked and confused. He didn't know what that was. For me, it was what he asked for. He began speaking that a Scout's honor is with 2 fingers on the forehead. I told him I don't know what that is. Isn't the salute better? I did question him knowing the U.S. Army and America. He said no then to say he knew and said they were not allowed to and against the USA. Also supporting Boy Scouts is the way. It's a covenant and secret swore brotherhood. He was surprised that I didn't even know about Boy Scouts. It hits me as to remember a friend in school told me that they build bridges and tie knots and ropes. So, I said that to Mark and he said it's a lot more to it than that. I was still holding the army salute this whole time. I said I was a part of the military for the greatest place on earth, the United States of America. Running with shoes as decoy. As a military child or explaining. I would do it on a military salute and he could do it on the Scouts honor thing. He demanded a 2-finger salute, as well insisted it, and wouldn't give in. A short pause and I eased off the salute. When I dropped my guard to do it, he lashes his body out, grabs a hold of my left shoulder and t-shirt to lose his grip and slips off my t-shirt. As I turned, running and then lifting my feet out of my shoes to use my bare feet like cleats for a soccer game. I was good at it even on gravel roads like the alleyway to add when I raced other kids in my past as they would be shocked. My shoes were about around 12 feet from the bus. Leaving my shoes behind as best defense as he yells louder because of distances. I was already between the 8th and 7th Street alleyway on South Park Street heading towards 7th Street. When Mark yells, "Don't tell anybody," and saying, "Are these your shoes? Did you lose your shoes? Did you forget your shoes? Are you coming back to get them?" I said they're mine and he could keep them. Mark was confused about my shoes, so my plan worked out even better than I thought. I stopped running when I hear him and because of distances. I continued to walk saying I know of the shoes and he responded, "Please don't tell," and I said I already told you I won't. But my life was in danger. As I was walking down 7th Street, my father was in the street with other adults talking. As I approached them to walk up to and passing my father and to outburst and interrupting him speaking. So I overtold him while seeing the other adult extremely curious, meaning peripherals of their reaction. Father and 2 other men halfway down on 8th Street. Describing very well spoken in behavior of just happen and serious as my tone. Not mad, just informing kind of way. The other guy spoke while shocked saying, "Wait, did you just hear what he's saying?" My father heard choppy bits of it of what I was saying because he was in the middle of talking or explaining something. He had an expression of being interrupted like complication because me speaking. He said, "What? Don't cause problems." The other guy said, "Did you hear what he said?" and that it was important as he was shocked on how smart or well I spoke on natural outburst in very informative way. Something I couldn't do again without thinking and slowly speaking with missing details. It was really good and fast-spoken from start to finish. I really never come to my father of problems, very rare meaning. I didn't make troubles is why. So, I said I know that's why I kept walking, for me saying when have you ever seen me or come to you about a problem to say to you. The only reason why I am telling you this is because if you ever find me missing one morning pointing at my trailer house window of my bedroom, and I'm not in my room or bed one morning, it's because I was a loose end, whatever that means. Then that caught my father's attention as well as the 2 other grown men. From the start telling them what happened. I told him nice and slowly while thinking on what happened. My father was in the army and he was very concerned and right away without a word he walked off, returning moments later with his phone in hand. I asked him if he contacted the army. He paused and said yeah, he let them know but he contacted SRS. One of the men said that too. But saying, "So did you contact the army? Army going to do anything about the big problem?" My father said he contacted SRS. As quick as it only took 2 minutes or so for him to call. The guy said that the army would definitely stop that for good. My father said that SRS are as good enough. What I explained was almost every detail as even government. Because when someone said that word, I questioned my father. What government was? A pause again from everyone. I spoke again on top of that, "Are they kids of police officers?" "Yes." The other guy said that I knew what they were talking about, and I was a very smart kid. SRS and the charge they got. Captured them in the act or while it was going on is still happening. 3 kids being raped while using drugs. Charged as adults as child rapist. They didn't do much time in jail as Mark's father went to a very rich man, CEO Schwanz, for money. So, his son Mark Marshall to have a better life. They were mad and Mark's father is a Saline County police officer. The harassment was just beginning as the problem of Mark Marshall. Making my life a hard and tough live to live. Ongoing harassment. Note, Mark comes back with unbelievable resources and friends in uniforms along with abuse and manufacturing meth to poison our town later on. When I was 17 years old, a shed was built in the alley by 15 or less police not from around saying government people. Between S. Walnut and S. Elm St. in alley of 9th and 8th Street. Many witnesses along with families of the military to inform me shortly before. They came there for a purpose. To learn more in timeline. Not long after SRS, the bombing on Pat's Pawn Store in Ogden, Kansas. Afterwards the changes that happened and they didn't waste no time to cause problems. Unexpected changes to happen with both my parents. Like where my dad was working at, the supervisors in a way before they did it to come out of the woodworks hassling and arrangement with new workers in placement. My mother being hounded by a new group of people that had a new building renovated calling it Korean Church off South Walnut Street on the corner of 11th Street. The most obvious place where all kids that went to school in my age and in all ages to be very memorable. The Korean Church did not last long due to racketeering money and alcohol. Like it like a party pad. All tickets are falls to wrongdoings to stay on relate to the main problem. Very corrupt and very easy to explain. The information and conversation and current courts of all said things and what has been done. If anything to me that they all know me to explain, meaning the authorities who all knows me have been said during the beginning years of me moving to a certain place. With harassment and electronic and communications devices in hazing, bullying and solicit amongst a lot of other things throughout the 27 years of threats.